It's the Boston Celtics' biggest strength, also one of their biggest weaknesses. They're crushing it in one very specific aspect, but they're struggling to make it count. And when the script's being flipped and they're having that aspect ran against them, they're struggling real bad. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to see exactly where they're thriving and where they're just surviving and try and figure out if there's an improvement that we can see throughout the year. I'm your boy Adam Taylor. I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Bruce Veliz. What's popping, Bruce?
Nothing much, Adam. Once again, lovely to be on here and again to break down the Boston Celtics with you. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, dude, it's coming off a bad loss to Orlando. It was just a bit of a weird game, bit of a weird showing. Orlando have been a tough matchup for Boston in recent years anyway. So then to put them up against that team when we don't really have the same Celtics team over the last few years and expect them to do well was kind of like wishful thinking anyway. But we learned a lot about the squad, and there's going to be some adjustments coming into Sunday's game, which will teach us a lot more as well about how this team can adjust, how they can implement schematic changes, how quickly they can adapt. And that's going to teach us where they need to be versus where they are right now. It's going to teach us how they can improve versus what they need to work on. So it's a really interesting kind of weekend from a basketball standpoint in terms of X's and O's and analytics. But from just a fan standpoint, like, dude, nobody wants to end the Sunday with a loss. So we're coming into this game hoping they get a win.
Yeah, and especially versus the Orlando Magic once again, you kind of want to get that revenge. Like you mentioned, Adam, a team that has matched up pretty well versus the Boston Celtics over these last couple of years with their effective ability to be a swarming defensive team, similar to the Boston Celtics. But also this season, them adding some nice offensive pieces and newer pieces have put them in a little bit of a more contending spot, I think, than the Celtics are this season with them dealing with their injuries. A little bit of a slow start to the Magic to start the year, but it'll be nice to see how the Boston Celtics kind of bounce back and look to use these adjustments that they learned from their first contest versus the Orlando Magic to kind of get the victory in tonight's game.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one thing Mazzulla's been really good at during his coaching tenure is game-to-game adjustments. In-game adjustments have been a work in progress, and they still are. But game-to-game, he seems to do really well at finding little tweaks that he can make to give the team an opportunity to be successful or at least hang around a bit longer than they did previously. And that kind of leads us into this, right? So earlier today, NBA University, or yesterday, actually, it's nearly a 24-hour-old tweet now. NBA University put out a graphic showing which teams are generating the most turnovers. So which teams are being pesky enough to create turnovers. The Celtics are first in the league in turnover creation. They're forcing teams into mistakes consistently. I reckon Josh Minott has a very big hand in all those steals and all those deflections that are leading to runouts for Boston. And that is something that when they've played really well, like if you go back to that Washington game and Minott's just jumping the passing lane every 10 seconds, when they're really like firing on all cylinders, their ability to generate those turnovers has been huge. And then when they're struggling is when teams are taking care of the ball, when they're being more physical and kind of knocking guys off their line so they can make passes easier, when they're not controlling angles. And it feels like it's going to be one of Boston's like biggest superpowers, but they also need to find ways to remain competitive when those turnovers aren't being generated. And we're talking about a team that over the last few years have been like one of the worst teams in generating turnovers because they've been such a risk averse unit defensively. They've been so compact and so well drilled. They haven't had to kind of gamble on jumping passing lanes the way they are this year. But it has definitely been one of this team's biggest strengths. And I'm wondering whether Mazzulla tries to lean into that a little bit more against Orlando, and also how much emphasis is being put on that moving forward in the season.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Adam, they are very dominating in that steal category. I'm looking at ESPN right now. The leading steal per game for the Celtics right now is Derek White, currently at 1.9 per game. And that is a very good stat to see, I think, in my opinion, because it goes to show you not only has he struggled a little bit on the offensive side of the ball, which maybe quells some Celtics fans' thoughts, but it actually shows that he's being effective for the Celtics in other areas, maybe if he's not being that true offensive scorer, by getting those steals per game and helping out the Boston Celtics. Similarly, like you mentioned, Josh Minott has also been that disruptor for this Boston Celtics team on the defensive end, has really emerged himself once he kind of got placed into this starting unit here, being able to play as that extra wing alongside a guy in Jalen Brown here and Namish Keita in that front court to help not only be a POA defender to help out bringing up guys on ball, but also to be just that kind of pest down low and to be just swiping for stuff. And then also I want to mention another guy who has also been growing up on that as well is Peyton Pritchard. He's averaging a steal per game this season as well. He struggled a little bit offensively, but also, like we mentioned in our last podcast, has grown really every single year he's kind of been in the league. He's gotten a little bit better at everything, coming in as a catch-and-shoot scorer, someone then working in the pick and rolls, now someone attacking the lane, getting offensive rebounds. And if we can see Peyton Pritchard get a little bit more feisty on this defensive end as well, not only just ingrained in the Celtics culture, but with him giving that hard work that we've always seen throughout his career, I think that's only going to bolster his ability kind of be more relentless on that end and maybe even want to fight a little bit harder on that end, which will give Joe Mazzulla a little bit more leeway in giving him some minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I think the more guys that can get involved in generating steals and generating quick offense, the more beneficial it's going to be, the more robust the overall offense is going to be. If you want to play fast and if you want to play fast and you're dead last in pace and your decision making has been patchy at best in terms of being at that 0.5 basketball, kind of really quick, snappy decisions. Multiple guys on the team still don't have very high level of processing speed because they're still developing. Then one way you can kind of counteract this is by generating steals, generating early leak outs, getting out in transition early and often. And I think that that's going to be core to the overall ability to play at the pace that we heard about coming into the season. Another aspect of this is also the Celtics deflections, the way that they're being pesky, they're being disruptive. They're not always generating steals, but they're kind of forcing teams to reset, have to scramble to get loose balls, scramble to get into a second or third action with the shot clock winding down. The Celtics are, and I'm just counting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're 9th in the NBA for deflections per game with 20.1. Now, bearing in mind, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 teams here that are separated by 0.6 deflections per game. So the Celtics could be as good as like 2, 4, 5, 6 in the league right now, but they're sitting at 19th, at 9th, for deflections. So they're being pesky in terms of getting to the ball. They're making life really difficult for teams, and that's allowing them to be this high pressure, full court press team that's really stopping people being able to get into early offense against them. Now, all of this is to say that the Celtics superpower right now is making life tough and getting out in transition, attacking the rim before the defense has an opportunity to set, forcing defenses into some really tough decisions, whether they take away the rim, whether they take away the 3-point line, whether they build out to the ball from the paint up to the perimeter, or whether they try and kill the perimeter first and hope that Boston's half-court offense just isn't good enough to penetrate them once they've been stifled in transition. And the numbers kind of tell us the same thing, right? So the Celtics lead the league in fast break opportunities, in steals. They're just getting out and running for it. It's called a forced turnovers, opponent turnovers. The Celtics lead the league in opponent turnovers, but they're 10th in the league for percentage of overall points scored off turnovers. So 17.1% of the Celtics offense is coming in turnover city right now. They're getting out and scoring. They score 100 points. 17 of them would have came in transition, right? Early, nice transition scoring. That's cool and everything, but if you're leading the league and forcing those turnovers and generating that transition, realistically, you want to be top 3, top 5, because you've got the volume there and you have these downhill scoring wings in Jalen Brown, Josh Minott, to a lesser extent, Hugo Gonzalez. You've got guys like Anthony Simons that can go Euro step or veer step to draw a foul. Pritchard being another guy that's super fast. And it feels like their biggest superpower is also showing up one of their weaknesses, which is being able to score and make make quick decisions at speed. And that's kind of a double-edged sword for this team right now, because what's the point in getting out of running if you're just not generating enough points to kind of warrant that energy expenditure?
No, I completely agree with you, Adam. And that's something that the Celtics are definitely going to have to kind of work on. They can't be kind of just throwing away these extra second chance points that they're basically gaining from the mistakes or from the other team, or their really aggressive defense that they've been able to utilize from their defenders and guys like Minott, Brown, Hugo Gonzalez, etc. And like you mentioned, with them having those downhill threats as well, like a Jalen Brown, like a Josh Minott, they should be able to capitalize on these transition points, on these 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s, whatever it is. The Celtics should be able to at least get down to the court and generate a play, even if it isn't the best play, something that can give them an opportunity to get those points if they are specifically rewarded, because they can't be leaving these points on the table. Because if they do leave these points on the table, what's essentially going to happen is then the other team is going to get the turnovers, and they're going to be beating us with those second chance points, where the Boston Celtics are going to have more turnovers, but less second chance points compared to the other team, which is just not going to be a good stat line and something that Joe Mazzulla is not going to be happy with Boston Celtics. Something that I also noticed as well when looking at some stats when we were talking about this is that the Celtics, courtesy of Bobby Manning, shout out to him over on CLNS, he tweeted this out talking about some of the Celtics winning the turnover battle in all 10 games, but they're 4-6 on the season. And comparative to the season, they are comparative to their opponent, 0-9-1 in free throw attempts, and the Celtics need to utilize that as well, attacking the lane, like we were saying, attacking downhill on those transition points, trying to work onto those mismatches and trying to get those extra free throws at the lane when you are in those transition areas, right? If you're on a 2-on-1 or something like that, you want to attack the body so that you can try to draw fouls so you get those extra free throw points, so then you can get even more second chance points off of the turnovers. And I think the Celtics maybe could utilize that a little bit more as well, trying to get to the free throw line and finding those free throw points. That would make them a little bit easier to get those second chance points and to have even some of these bigger leads and give them a more cushion.
Yeah, for sure. If you're getting downhill consistently and putting teams in a more difficult position, sometimes the only option they have is to try and defend hard, and then you draw fouls. And this has been one of my biggest gripes all year. Like, the Celtics are driving more, they're attacking the 2-point range more, but the problem they have is their 2-point offense is primarily coming from the mid range, and primarily the long mid range. So they're not getting deep enough into the paint to force a defense into a tough decision where they're like, do I let them score or do I send them to the line? And that's been a concern for me for a while. I'm going to put up their drive stats actually, because last time I looked, they were one of the worst in the league. So we're looking at teams' drives per game here. I'm just pulling it up as I speak, tracking drives over the first 10 games, obviously. So if we're looking at the total number of drives per game, the Celtics are 30, 29, 28, 27, 26. They're 25th in the NBA for drives per game. So they're not driving much. And when they are, they're not getting deep enough into the paint, or they're not threatening enough that teams feel the need to foul or feel the need to send to and draw a foul that way. And that's primarily because when the Celtics do drive, it's a Jalen Brown drive or a Peyton Pritchard drive, and 9 times out of 10, they're a stop and pop from the elbows or from the nail area around the free throw line extended, because that's just where guys are comfortable from, and it's their counter to when defenses try and cut their drive off. You want, realistically, guys like Jalen Brown, guys like Josh Minott, when they're getting downhill, you want somebody mirroring or cutting baseline or coming off the slot with a secondary cut that's going to make a defense stretch out. So then you're putting them in these decision-making positions. Then when you go into a Euro step, when you drop that shoulder and try to drive through, whatever action you play or you come out of, the defense has to make a choice, and then you get sent to the line. And I think when you put all of this together, when you put their additional possessions through turnovers, because that's what turnovers are, they're additional bites of the apple, and you look at the way the Celtics are winning that possession battle in terms of having more offensive possessions than their opponent, but still not managing to win games. And some of that is down to like a significant free throw disparity. It's very clear that you've really improved in one specific aspect that should help unlock the door to 10 or like 5 or 10 different ways of winning or controlling a game, but you're still developing and you're not right where you need to be. The Celtics shouldn't be taking 13 more shots than Orlando and losing by the margin that they did. And some of that is just the amount of free throws that Orlando got. Some of that was just not being able to finish in open space. And then some of that was shot selection as well. And I think that you need, there is an evolution happening right now, just in the overall way that this team plays, that is still in the very early stages. But the data is telling us, and the eye test is backing it up, that you're doing this one very specific thing really well, but you're not maximizing its potential because of X, Y, and Z.
No, exactly. And then the Celtics kind of got to just work through that. In my personal opinion, I think over through the season, they'll kind of get to that comfortability phase of kind of cohesively working alongside each other and actually trying to understand how to work as a one unit. And that once they get to that point, maybe we'll see that obviously the turnovers still continue to rise with these second chance points and opportunities to strike off these turnovers to continue to rise for this Boston Celtics team. You also mentioned versus this Magic squad. And with this team, we kind of seen this kind of offensive game plan, these kind of longer twos, kind of angling from the mid range, kind of scoring from there. And maybe, like you mentioned, the Celtics should prioritize a little bit more of attacking that lane and being more of an aggressive at the basket team, filtering into their aspect as well, so they can get those maybe weird bouncing rebounds that kind of come down to player, have an extra body down low on the low block to be able to secure that rebound to go back up with it. And I think that would be able to help the Celtics as well.
And that's kind of leading into the second part of this conversation, right? Is they're crashing the glass more than previous years. Like before, they didn't really. You had Drew Holiday, that was just a ridiculously good offensive rebounder. You had Peyton Pritchard, but for the most part, dudes got back. They got back, they got set up in the half court, and they waited for teams to initiate their offense. This year, they're crashing a bit more, and they're putting a lot more emphasis on offensive rebounds. But what's happening is when they don't secure those rebounds, they're out of position, and now opposing teams are starting to really punish Boston in transition themselves. And then it's like, damn, the Celtics are generating all of this good transition opportunity on offense, but they're struggling to slow it down on defense. And I pulled up the numbers here because I was quite curious about this. So the Celtics, in terms of fast break defense points allowed, the Celtics are 13th in the NBA. So teams just averaging 15 points per game on the break against Boston's defense. In terms of points off turnovers, the Celtics are actually doing really well because they're not turning the ball over very much. They are making great decisions there. So they're first in the league. They're allowing the fewest amount of points scored off turnovers because they're not turning the ball over too much. That's 13.8 per game. It is realistically the second chance points that they're allowing because of their rebounding issues. And I mean, you can look at that. They're 29th in the NBA for second chance points allowed. And it's the opposition fast break points. And when you put that together and you understand that if the Celtics miss a shot and the team rip that rebound and get out, they either pitch the ball ahead or they turn the Jets on. Even if they miss their first shot, there's a high percentage chance they're going to get their own offensive board because of the lack of rebounding talent on the Celtics. And then now you're up against one of the worst teams in the NBA for stopping those second chance points. So it's a double. Like, as much as the Celtics are doing a great thing in generating their own transition, it's become their biggest flaw, or second, one of their top two biggest defensive flaws is limiting the opportunities in transition and then being able to get in front of guys' box out early and control that glass. So I find it really interesting because it's like, hey, here's something we're doing really, really well on offense, but at the same time, we have no idea how we're going to stop it defensively when we're prioritizing the offensive glass so much.
Yeah, that's something I think that Joe's going to have to kind of obviously just like work through, get more comfortable with his kind of newer players. You mentioned the Celtics kind of seemingly struggling with the rebounding this season comparative to last. I have the numbers pulled up. I believe they average around 42 rebounds per game, which puts them in the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I believe, in the NBA. So kind of in that bottom half there with the rebounding, and specifically if they can't get those rebounds once the other teams are, already pushing in transition, and like you mentioned, has somebody already down there on the glass to grab the offensive rebound, that just automatically hinders it for the Boston Celtics to just even have the extra opportunity to get those second chance points or just stop those second chance points to get them on their end of the basket. And when they're ranked 27th in allowing of second chance points, that just doesn't help the needle as well.
And I mean, to make it worse, they're 27th in the NBA for defensive rebounds. It's their offensive boards that are skewing them higher in the rebounding rankings. In terms of actually securing their own glass and forcing teams into single shot possessions, they're 27th. So not only are they struggling to slow teams down in transition, they're struggling to control the glass, and they're struggling to impact guys that are taking second chance points. Now, this isn't me saying that the Celtics are a terrible team. They're doing a lot of things very well. But what we're trying to point out here is like, hey, transition is a major weapon offensively, but it's also a weapon other teams are yielding against them. And it goes back to like the age-old saying, like, if you do this with a weapon, that weapon could be turned around and used on you. And that's exactly where the Celtics are right now. They're wielding this huge weapon in terms of their transition offense, but it's being taken off them after every shot, turned on them, and used against them to better effect than what they're using it, because they're not maximizing their transition opportunities to generate the points that they need. It's just a really interesting juxtaposition.
Exactly. And for the Celtics as well, like there's obviously the positive, there's obviously the negatives, in my opinion, with this team and kind of how they've been able to function. But I do think that once we get towards, maybe I know we're kind of like 10 games into the season. Once we get to around 15 to 25 games around into the season, I think we'll kind of see the true version of the Celtics team and kind of understanding where they will be in this regard. And I think that will kind of give us a little bit of a further story to tell when we kind of dissect this team a little more onto the season to see if these are just, maybe some early season issues that have happened with this team struggling to get out in transition, maybe some things they need to work on, or if this is going to be a trend that's going to continue, throughout the season. That's going to be a big glaring issue for them maybe to fix around the trade deadline, depending on what direction this team is heading in.
Yeah, I mean, they're still developing, right? Like, there's a lot of dudes here that have rarely played consistent NBA minutes. There's some dudes here that are in their first year. There's some guys here that are in roles that are completely alien compared to what they've played for 2 or 3 years. Look at the way Derek White's shots are being generated. He's not coming off flare screens the way he used to. He's not cutting off ball to get to his spots and just hit off the catch. He's being asked to create off the bounce. That takes time to adjust to. This whole team right now, and Jalen Brown alluded to this after the Magic game with some of his quotes. I think one of the words he used was like a learning curve, and that's exactly what the Celtics are working through right now. Is quite a steep, quite a sharp learning curve, and these issues that we're talking about, the Celtics are going to have far more intricate data on this, and they're going to understand where their flaws are, where their issues are arising, how they can fix them. It just takes time, and I think that the hardest part is the NBA waits for no one. There's always another bigger, badder team right around the corner waiting to kind of steal your lunch money. And the Celtics are in a position right now where they were the big bad bully for a few years, stealing everyone's lunch money. And now it's payback time. Now that everyone wants their get back. And Orlando are a team that like to play with their physicality. They like to use their size and their strength. And you saw that down the stretch against Boston on Friday. And I think something we're going to see again is how much can this team deal with the physicality, and how much can they deal when dealing with an aggressive offense, like with a Paolo Banchero blistering through the lane trying to get to the rim, with Franz Wagner doing what he does, with Desmond Bain, and you can go down the list, right? But what I'm getting at is it takes time, and you need to lose to teams like this and get humbled against teams like this in order to figure out how it's going to work for you within the confines of the identity you're trying to construct.
And I believe this was the first time that the Celtics played the Magic this season. So obviously, with them going up against them now in this second contest, we'll get to see that kind of little bit of a battle here. You know that look, their first game that they played versus 76ers early on in the year, we kind of saw some issues kind of go on late in that game, and they clearly fixed those issues kind of going into that cup game that we saw just last week when they played on last Friday. So I do believe that, like we kind of mentioned earlier, Joe Mazzulla will kind of have some options to deal with the physicality of a Paolo Banchero, maybe to deal with the lights out shooting from a Desmond Bain if he does go hot, maybe putting a guy like Ugo Gonzalez or Josh Minott as a primary defender on him, something that we saw similarly with Cade Cunningham versus that Detroit Pistons team earlier on in the season, or maybe we see an ability where they try to pressure a guy like Wendell Carter or Jonathan Isaac to kind of force them into some bad positions. Because we could see some of that as well with some of our bigger guys, maybe running a Namish Keita and Chris Boucher lineup. Those options are going to be available for the Boston Celtics to kind of just combat with the Orlando Magic, to utilize their adjustments to be a better team than Orlando was versus us. And obviously Orlando got the first laugh versus the Boston Celtics on Friday, a cup game a little bit more important than what this game is going to be kind of going into today. But I do think that the Celtics will kind of seek revenge and utilize that tonight.
You mentioned Chris Boucher, and Chris Boucher hasn't played for the last 2 games. He played the first 4, sat for 2, played for 2, has sat for 2. He's been struggling. He was very effective during preseason, and then the regular season started, and he had a good game against Houston. He went 2 of 6 from the field, did some work. But overall, he hasn't been incredibly effective. I think his best game was the Knicks. It ended with 4 blocks, 5 stocks in total. Do you think he would be, just because of the size and the length that he offers at the 4, and just having that extra man that can rotate across and offer some extra rim protection as a weak side help team, that weak side defense? Do you think you're going to see much of him on Sunday?
I would like to see a little bit of Chris Boucher. I think we could kind of throw him into that rotation. I feel like with Joe Mazzulla, depending on the team, he's going to utilize this big man group kind of differently. We've seen basically in every single game, and what he's alluded to from the beginning of the season is what you see in a lineup isn't going to be the same every single game. And we've kind of seen that. Xavier Tillman was getting minutes from early on, that he kind of was shunned out. Jordan Walsh was seeing no minutes at all to start of the season, and then back-to-back games, he looks to make improvements. So now he's kind of fighting in this rotation. I realistically do think it is kind of depending on the matchup. The Magic as well being a little bit of a bigger team. I know they got Wendell Carter, Jonathan Isaac, Paolo Banchero, Mo Wagner, Goga Batazde. I think that they could use the additional help in rebounding, regardless of who it is out there on the court with that additional size, with the Celtics being so weak there. And depending if a guy like maybe Luka Garza or Xavier Tillman got into some foul trouble, I do think a guy like Chris Boucher would actually help out the Boston Celtics in this instance.
Me too. I think sometimes they need that additional length, and obviously not as a starter. Josh Minott, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned, gets that starting role, but that additional length. And Jordan Walsh has kind of been filling that role the last few games, and I feel like he's been doing a good job. We spoke about the crossover between him and Minott on the last episode. What I will say is that I think that Boucher brings a bit more experience, a little bit more of a veteran know-how, and that feels like it's been missing times over the last few games. Coming up against an Orlando team that's trying to be more than a first round exit roster this year, with the addition of Desmond Bain, I'd like somebody that can just read the way the game's unfolding. And I think they're really missing Horford's ability to do that. So yeah, I'd agree. I'd think I'd like Boucher there. But that kind of wraps me up with everything I wanted to say. If you're still here, I'd definitely hit the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking about the overall just transition offense, transition defense, whether or not you think this is an area the Celtics are going to improve on, or if it's going to be an issue all year, and any other concerns you've got. Make sure you go show Bruce some love as well. Bruce is over on, he's primarily on Twitter, now known as X, but it will always be called Twitter where I'm at. Bruce, what's your at so they can find you, man?
You can find me at Bruce Velez, which is my name, BruceVeliz, where you can catch all my latest on the NBA.
And with that, everybody, I want to say deuces. We'll catch you again soon enough. Peace out.